there's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness Monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele-mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele-mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele-mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele-mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a brachiosaurus or a diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele-mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash. The Tyrannosaurus rex, the formidable predator, the world-known celebrity of the animal kingdom, the king of all dinos. Since its discovery in 1902, this dangerous predator has fascinated both researchers and the regular public. But despite its terrifying reputation, there were actually other beasts that could defeat the T-Rex. And one of the true nemeses of this dinosaur was the Triceratops, a herbivore. But despite its plant-based diet, the dino was huge and had 2 nightmarish large horns and a smaller one, along with thickened bones which added to its defenses and helped protect itself from dreadful predators like the T-Rex. This dino was something like proof that herbivores were no pushovers. Its formidable horns were about a foot wide at their base and tapered into mean points capable of skewering any predator, even a T-Rex like Juicy Barbecue. The colossal skull of the Triceratops sported an enormous frill made of protective solid bone, which was topped with hornlets. From the tip of the animal's beak to the spiked rim of the frill, the head of the Triceratops could reach a whopping 10 feet in length and weigh around a ton. This gargantuan construction The head of the dino was attached to the body with the help of a ball and socket joint. This allowed the dino to swivel its head around with astonishing speed, brandishing its horns to scare predators away. That's one of the reasons why a T-Rex that decided to attack a Triceratops was actually taking a big risk. The battle could easily go either way. Of course, the king of the dinosaur world could win and get its long-awaited feast, but just as likely, the hunted could become the hunter and end the T-Rex's game. Now, how about we find some more cool and lesser-known facts about those intriguing creatures, dinosaurs? For example, dinos almost certainly did not roar. Scientists think they might have cooed instead. More accurately, they probably produced sounds in ways similar to the way ostriches boom or doves coo. You see, many modern birds use a method of producing sounds called closed-mouth vocalization. Sounds are made by inflating the throat rather than passing air through the syrinx, the vocal organ of birds. In other words, the Jurassic Park movies got it all wrong. A lot of early dino reconstructions appeared under the influence of those scary noises that we associate with modern predators, like lions. So, on screen, dinosaurs have their mouths open when they produce sounds, just like lions when they roar. But real dinos wouldn't have done that, especially not before charging at their prey. They wouldn't have advertised their presence to other animals nearby, not when all they wanted was to have a meal. The Quetzalcoatlus was a member of the ancient group of flying reptiles, pterosaurs, and it was also the largest flying animal to have ever lived on Earth. The giraffe-sized creature had thin limbs, a startlingly long beak, and a staggering 40-foot wingspan. Researchers believe that these creatures could have also used their folded-up wings as legs, so they probably walked on all fours. Scientists discovered the Quetzalcoatlus about 50 years ago, but they still have a tricky time trying to piece together the details of this animal's life. For example, how did it even manage to lift its ginormous body off the ground when flying? Whatever the answer is, this creature is our first real look at the entirety of the largest animals ever to fly. One of the reasons why it's been taking so long to unearth the secrets of the Quetzalcoatlus is because this creature had hollow bones that helped it to fly, just like modern flying animals. So, when you find these potato chips-like bones preserved in super hard rock, you need to somehow remove them without destroying them, and that's a really tough task. The Tyrannosaurus rex was quite a slow runner. Its speed was likely to be just about 10 miles per hour, which is approximately as fast as the speed of an average human runner. As for T-Rex babies, according to hatchling recreations from the American Museum of Natural History, they were pretty cute. About the size of super skinny turkeys and covered with downy feathers. The largest land-based dino was the Argentinosaurus. This massive animal often reached up to 130 feet in length and 69 feet in height. Considering the average blue whale is around 70 feet long, you can easily imagine just how giant that dinosaur was. Many dinos had feathers, and I'm not only talking about avian ones. The largest feathered dinosaur we know about was the Eutyrannus huali, which translates as a beautiful feathered tyrant. It was a super predator and cousin of the T-Rex. Scientists think that the dino most likely relied on its feathers to stay warm. However surprising it may sound, some of the biggest dinosaurs were actually herbivores. Let's take the Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus, for example. These creatures were giant, but followed a plant-based diet. Now, I'm not sure if you should try it or not, but apparently, you can tell the difference between a simple stone and a dinosaur fossil by licking it. It may not sound like the most legitimate approach, but even paleontologists sometimes find themselves doing this. The thing is, if you lick a potential fossil, it will slightly stick to your tongue. That's because fossils are way more porous than stones. When dinosaurs first saw the light of day during the Triassic period, around 230 million years ago, Earth's continents were clustered together and formed one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. Over the next 165 million years, Pangaea slowly drifted apart, and that separated many dinosaur species from one another. And still, most of the world's dinosaur fossils are found in 3 places: the high-altitude Badlands of China, North America, and Argentina have the largest amount of fossils, or at least easily accessible ones. In reality, most parts of the world are covered with fossils, but those located in desert-like environments are easier to find due to the lack of vegetation. Interestingly, most fossilized dino bones aren't bones anymore. The fossilization process often occurs when something gets trapped between layers of sediment or sand. For millions of years, those remnants stay there. At one point, they got surrounded by a layer of water. It replaces the original organic material with minerals. In other words, it's not the real thing anymore. It's a rock-like copy. The Triceratops boasted 3 giant horns sticking out of its head, but its teeth were even more fascinating. This dino had around 800 teeth, and new ones kept growing throughout its life. These teeth grew in sets of 36 to 40 tooth columns, with each column having 3 to 5 teeth, vertically stacked on one another. Some dinos had hollow bones, like today's birds. These creatures stored air in their bones, which helped them improve their breathing abilities. It made these dinosaurs lighter on their feet and allowed them to breathe much more efficiently. The Nigersaurus replaced its teeth every 2 weeks. This unique creature had rows and rows of teeth in reserve. They were hidden away in its mouth, and when a set of teeth wore out, they fell out, and the next row moved into position. Dinosaurs didn't all go extinct at the same time as soon as the asteroid crashed into Earth. Instead, the space rock likely triggered a chain reaction of events which changed the face of the planet. Of course, it didn't happen overnight, but over the next few hundred or even thousands of years. As a result, all but avian dinosaurs went extinct. The word dinosaur came from the Greek language. Deinos means terrible, and sauros means lizard. So basically, dinosaur can be translated to terrible lizard. You may object that not all dinosaurs were terrifying predators. This name might be appropriate for the T-Rex, but not, let's say, the tiny May. Rumor has it that when Sir Richard Owen, an English biologist, came up with the name for dinosaurs, he used the word terrible in a different sense. He described those ancient creatures as fearfully great, as in far larger in size than any previously discovered reptiles.
It was a 40 feet long and 12 feet tall beast, the king of dinosaurs. Its massive and muscular body weighed up to 8 tons. Its serrated teeth were sharp, and its jaws had a bite so strong they could crush a car. The creature had 2 powerful legs. It lived in forested river valleys all across North America, almost 70 million years ago. I'm talking about the most famous movie star among dinosaurs, T-Rex. It was very smart, with a brain twice as big as that of any large meat-eating dino. It was slower than other hunters, developing a speed of up to 12 miles per hour. Its other weakness was its small arms. Some scientists think they were just an evolutionary leftover, like the pelvic bones of some snakes. But others believe T-Rex used its arms to hunt. Its 4-inch claws helped the animal out. T-Rex was undoubtedly frightening, but surprisingly, there were even scarier dinosaurs in the past. Around 100 million years ago, there was a giant creature with the name that meant a spine lizard. It was Spinosaurus, the largest carnivorous dino. It was bigger than T-Rex and could grow almost 60 feet long. Its weight could be as great as 22 tons. The animal had long spines on its back. They could grow up to 7 feet long and were connected by folds of skin. They formed something that looked like a sail. Some scientists think it was a hump Spinosaurus used to store water. This dino had dense bones and short hind limbs. Researchers believe that these dinos could use their flat and wide-clawed feet for paddling. This was the first dino that could ever swim. Unfortunately, it couldn't process smells like most other theropods. These were a group of two-legged carnivorous dinosaurs that appeared on Earth 230 million years ago. That's why the animals the creature hunted could hide from it on land. The Spino dino spent most of its time in the water. It roamed the swamps of North Africa and mostly fed on fish, big prehistoric sharks, and sometimes other dinosaurs. It had a long, thin, and narrow snout like a crocodile. Unlike other dinos of its kind, which had curved teeth, Spinosaurus had conically shaped straight teeth. Giganotosaurus, which is the Greek word for giant southern lizard, was considered the largest meat-eating dino until Spinosaurus was found. It lived around 100 million years ago in South America, around 30 million years before T-Rex appeared there. It was longer and taller, but more slender than T-Rex. And while T-Rex had 2 fingers, this giant had 3. It walked upright on its 2 big and very strong legs. Its tail was pointed and thin, which helped the creature make fast turns while running and keep its balance. The animal could move at a speed of up to 31 miles per hour. T-Rex's maximum speed was 25 miles per hour at the most. Any faster than that, and the giant could lose its balance and fall over. Giganotosaurus had 2 arms with sharp claws. It was mostly an opportunistic meat eater feeding on everything it found on its way. Its bite wasn't as strong as T-Rex's, but it still managed to deal with some bigger animals, like herbivore dinosaurs. Maybe there was even an Argentinosaurus among them, the biggest animals ever found. It's hard to imagine how Giganotosaurus could take down a 50-ton beast on its own. That's why scientists think they may have hunted in groups. The animal's only weakness was its small brain. It was twice smaller than T-Rex's. This means the T could at least win a chess game. Big retractable sickle-shaped claws in the creature's feet are great for cutting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Utahraptor. That's a mini T-Rex that lived 125 million years ago. If a big T-Rex was coming for you, you could hide under a rock or some other place where it wouldn't be able to reach you. But there would be no place where its mini version couldn't follow you. Discovered in Utah, strong, toothy, and armored with huge claws, more than 9 inches long, an adult Utahraptor was 20 feet long and 5 feet tall at the hip. These creatures were covered in feathers. This is why fully grown animals look like gigantic turkeys. The Utahraptor's main weakness was their size. They were a bit smaller than many other dinos, but these guys made up for that by hunting in packs. Allosaurus, which means a different lizard in Greek, was a massive carnivore reaching 40 feet in length and weighing 2 tons. It roamed the Earth around 150 million years ago. Similar to T-Rex, this dino had strong back legs and a large snout. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth. The animal easily lost them when eating, but they usually grew back. Allosaurus was already fully grown by the age of 15, and its lifespan was around 28 years. The creature had a short neck and a long, narrow skull, disproportionately big compared to the rest of its body. This dino also had a pair of horns above its eyes and ridges along the top of its nasal bones leading to those horns. Allosaurus chased big herbivore dinosaurs. When several Allosauruses gathered in a group, they could take down even such colossal creatures as Apatosaurus. But scientists still doubt if they could cooperate, because these dinos were generally not too friendly toward one another. Some of the animal's bones had an hourglass shape, which made them lighter and reduced their strength. They were similar to the hollow bones modern birds have. Another weakness of this dino was its bite. It was less powerful than that of some modern animals, like lions, alligators, or leopards. Scientists think Allosaurus may have used its skull as a hatchet. The Rizinosaurus was one of the freakiest dinos out there. It lived 100 to 60 million years ago. It had a very small head and bizarre feet with 4 toes, unlike their ancestors that had 3. Its body was covered with feathers. This weirdo had the longest claws scientists have ever recorded. They were 3 feet long each. These claws were curved and sharp. The dino used them to collect plants for lunch. Scientists are still not sure if this creature was a herbivore or carnivore, or both. The dino had a long neck. There were no teeth in its upper jaw. Its wrist bones were like the ones modern birds have. The Rizinosaurus might have evolved from a meat-eating to plant-eating animal throughout time. Unfortunately, in comparison with meat-eaters, herbivore dinosaurs were much weaker. And still, Those claws could make its enemies think twice. High-spined lizard, or a Crocanthosaurus, lived 110 million years ago. It was 2 feet shorter than T-Rex but had a similar body structure. Like T-Rexes, these creatures often went after bigger and more challenging animals. For example, with those backbones so hard, it seemed as if they were carrying a giant turtle shell, like Ankylosaur. The high-spined lizard was very territorial. It had a brain shaped like the letter S and an excellent sense of smell. What made a Crocanthosaurus vulnerable was its small arms. And still, the creature used them to hunt other animals surprisingly well. The dino pulled its catch close to its torso, which was like a hug you wouldn't be able to escape from. Diplodocus lived 150 million years ago. The 90-foot-long creature was possibly the longest dinosaur ever. Its tail, which could reach 46 feet in length, was the longest tail of any animal ever. And its neck was more than 20 feet long. The underside of the dino's tail had 2 rows of bones, which made the creature even stronger and more mobile. Diplodocus didn't look scary, long-necked, gentle, peacefully munching on plants, until it used its tail like a whip, making even the scariest meat-eaters back away. This tail was the center of the dino's mass, which was why Diplodocus could move very quickly. Scientists first thought, this is a lizard-like animal, but its posture was more like that of an elephant. Plus, Diplodocus had nasal openings on its forehead. The dino's weakness was its small teeth and weak force bite. Quetzalcoatlus was the biggest flying animal ever. It lived 70 million years ago and controlled the skies of North America. It was a toothy, pin-headed creature with a blunt snout. It was as tall as a giraffe and weighed 550 pounds. Quetzalcoatlus had a small torso and long neck and legs. Its wings were short compared to the rest of its body, but still long enough to stretch for 40 feet. Scientists think this animal could fly at a speed of up to 80 miles per hour and travel 400 miles in a day. This dino was weaker than, let's say, T-Rex or most other carnivores of that time, but it had powerful muscles, which helped the animal rise into the air in the blink of an eye.
Ooh, from giant spiders to venomous snakes, we all get freaked out by Australian creatures. Yeah, me too. But newly discovered fossils show that things were way more dangerous 120 million years ago, when this land was completely ruled by massive razor-clawed megaraptors. Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't around then. These dinosaurs were about 26 feet long and walked on 2 legs, just like the famous T-Rex. They were fast, fierce hunters, with a superpower: their hug. Yep, their massive, muscular forearms had huge curved claws, perfect for grabbing and holding onto prey. Uh-oh. They would wrap their arms around their poor victims, just like a hug, and trap them with no chance of escape. And even though their teeth were quite small, they were still sharp enough to rip through flesh. The first time we heard about megaraptors was in the late 90s, when a paleontologist discovered their fossils in the region of Patagonia, Argentina. Since then, no one has ever found a complete skeleton, only fragments. But probably the most important one yet was uncovered in Australia at the beginning of this year. Researchers were exploring Victoria's stunning coastline when they stumbled upon megaraptor fossils. First, they spotted bones from its lower legs and a few vertebrae washed up on the beach. Even though they were working with just a couple of fragments, a deeper analysis confirmed that these belonged to a megaraptor. And not just any megaraptor, it was the oldest one ever discovered. This discovery gets even more exciting because it adds weight to the theory that these dinosaurs might have originated in Australia. But we already knew that they roamed the land down under since early 2023, when researchers found the top of a megaraptor skull in the country. So let's rewind a bit. We first found their remains in Argentina, right? Right. But then, years later, researchers found fossils of the same family of dinosaurs on the other side of the world, in Australia. If the ones in Oceania were older, how did these creatures end up in South America? Of course, they didn't fly there. They didn't cross continents by swimming either, although there is a theory that they could swim. Remember, we're talking about the dinosaur era, which happened millions of years ago. And back then, Australia and Argentina were actually pretty close. Basically, they were one. Both lands were part of the supercontinent known as Gondwana, and they were connected through Antarctica. Wait, but wasn't this path freezing? I mean, yeah, these dinos had to pass through Antarctica to get to their destination, but they weren't freezing their tails off. This all happened during the mid-Cretaceous period, when the weather was super warm. Back then, the poles were covered in plants, not ice. So let's just say they took full advantage of the good weather to make the crossing. Now, about 180 million years ago, Gondwana started to break apart. At some point, Australia drifted away from the supercontinent, cutting it off from other landmasses, including South America. That's why the same dinosaurs showed up in completely different parts of the world. Mystery solved. Now, let's get back to that recent discovery. The researchers didn't just find a few traces of megaraptors on the beach. In total, they uncovered 250 dinosaur bones at the site, but only 5 of them were really important. They belong to 3 different species of dinosaurs that, as it turns out, all lived in Victoria at the same time. So yeah, we've already talked about those first 2 bones. They were from the megaraptor. Next, we have a shin bone from a Unexplained. That's my best shot at pronouncing it. It's a dino also known as the southern raptor. This is a type of dromaeosaur with a long snout. And the last 2 shin bones of different sizes came from a Carcharodontosaurus, whose name means shark-toothed lizard. This one is a particularly big deal for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's the first evidence that this species lived in Australia. And number 2, it was small, and that is pretty surprising since we've always thought of this species as being massive. Fossils found in Argentina, for example, show this dinosaur reached a length of about 36 feet. But the one in Australia was much smaller, measuring only around 6 to 10 feet long. And that's still plenty big. Basically, what we're saying is that the way predators were ranked in these 2 parts of the world was completely different. In South America, Carcharodontosaurs grew to massive T-Rex-sized giants, towering over megaraptors and dominating the landscape. But in Australia, it was the complete opposite. There, huge, powerful megaraptorids roamed the land alongside smaller Carcharodontosaurs. So the predator dynamic was different. And all of this just shows how unique the ecosystem in Victoria was back then. Although isolated dinosaur bones have been found in Western and South Australia, most of the fossils come from the eastern part of the country, like Queensland. And there, researchers dug up something really, really rare: a well-preserved dinosaur skull. The study shows that this bone belonged to the 4th discovered specimen of Titanosaur. This group includes those massive long-necked dinosaurs. They look like the Brachiosaurus, but some of them were even bigger, reaching 120 feet long. The skull, discovered in 2018, belongs to this guy, whose pronunciation is above my pay grade, and the research points out that it roamed the Earth around 98 million years ago. Thanks to this find, scientists were able to recreate, for the very first time, what its face might have looked like. Probably after checking out the illustration, they thought, hey, it looks a lot like its cousin. They were talking about another species of Titanosaur, this other unpronounceable guy. And guess where they used to live? Yep, in Argentina. So, this research also supports the theory that dinosaurs crossed between South America and Australia during the mid-Cretaceous period. Now, this wasn't the only secret buried in Queensland, though. In 2024, researchers working there discovered the fossilized remains of a new species of pterosaur, about 100 million years old. These creatures were the first vertebrates that could actually fly, existing alongside dinosaurs. They were massive, powerful predators, with wingspans of up to 36 feet. But these remains belong to a new species within the pterosaur group, which they have named Hakuna Matata, or something similar. Compared to their cousins, they were on the smaller side, with a wingspan of about 15 feet. Still, that's bigger than a snowy albatross, the largest flying bird we have today. This species of pterosaurs were terrifying beasts, flying over the ocean to hunt for prey. Once they spotted their victim, they'd snap open their 60-centimeter jaws, filled with sharp spike-like teeth, and, well, I guess there was no escaping that. The last incredible discovery we're talking about today also comes from Queensland. For over 20 years, students walked past a plain-looking rock at Biloela State High School completely unaware that it held 66 dinosaur footprints, and they date back about 200 million years. These prints were made by a group of these Latin-named guys. They were small dinosaurs with 3 toes on each foot, and it seems like they were all over Queensland around that early Jurassic period. The rock they found at the school worked like a snapshot, giving us a better idea of what these dinosaurs were like and how they behaved. After taking a closer look, researchers found that the footprints came from 47 individual dinosaurs. This group was probably walking along or maybe crossing a waterway when their footprints got marked in the white clay. And the study also discovered that they were likely moving at less than 4 miles per hour at the time. So we only discovered those marks in Australia. But fossils of the same species found in other countries showed that they had these long legs, a big chunky body, short arms, and this tiny head with a beak. But honestly, they don't sound as scary when you realize they only ate plants. Whew. Harsh winds made this icy land unrecognizable. If you lived in Australia about 100 million years ago, you'd be wearing jackets and sweaters. But around 220 million years ago, this icebox of land was locked up in what used to be Pangaea. This supercontinent had Australia and Antarctica fused, including even South America and Africa. Scientists found out Australia was going solo at the same speed as your fingernails grow when it decided to cut ties with Antarctica. Before that, the Earth was just a giant floating ball of ice, and the sun wasn't as hot and fiery as today. You're walking along an icy path in the early Cretaceous period. You're looking for something to eat, but plant life is scarce. With no sunlight, there isn't any energy source for any edible vegetation, save for moss. So, finding a decent snack would be like bumping into a unicorn. You lurk around and find 3-toed footprints leading to what looks like a frozen forest. You follow them, but still can't figure out who these prints belong to. You reach a dead end with the snow up to your knees and realize you're stuck. Suddenly, you hear some growling not far away. You look to your right and see a large theropod walking towards you. It's almost as tall as a giraffe and has razor-sharp teeth on its jaws. Ooh, lucky you. This dino is a carnivore and probably the CEO of the prehistoric meat-eating world. Scientists have discovered at least 15 other dinosaur species, including a 22-foot-long polar carnivore and a smaller predator that could easily run away from its larger mates. You try to swim through the thick snow as the beast with those large teeth is making its way to you. Good thing some trees don't let it move quickly enough. You manage to find a good rhythm, lift each leg above your waist, and make it out in time. As it gets closer to you, you make it through the snow and duck between some bare trees. You were lucky this time, but it'll be back for you. Fossils of plants and leaves show that back in those days, Antarctica wasn't as chilly as it is today, and the same goes for its northern counterpart, Alaska. Still, living between 70 to 100 million years ago wasn't that comfortable. The T-Rex was the undisputed king of the dinosaurs. Scientists found bones and fossils from dry places like Montana and Texas, but they were shocked when they found T-Rex fossils in Alaska. There were also fossils of horned, long-necked, and feathery dinosaurs in the Arctic region. Even though the T-Rex was an apex predator, it wasn't as fast as you would expect, but its size was enough to make you run for your life. One of the T-Rex's favorite meals was a duck-billed dino as big as an elephant called the Edmontosaurus, which dwelled in frosty areas. These creatures were probably slow migrators and wouldn't have been able to find any shelter to live through the harsh conditions. Their jaws show they were plant eaters and had to find some greens to munch on wherever they went. They were constantly on the move since they strolled rather than ran. Scientists claim they would walk at an incredibly slow speed of around 1 mile per hour. Even a tortoise could outrun them. If you were a dinosaur during those days, then you'd face one of the most challenging decisions of your life. Live with mom and dad or get your own place. No, actually, the choice was to stay for the winter or flee. The dinos that remained in the frosty lands made nests and stayed for the whole year. Some scientists debate whether these polar dinosaurs were warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Mammals and birds have internal mechanisms to keep warm, like using their muscles and metabolism. That's why our bodies shiver when we're freezing. Reptiles need to bask under the sun or lie next to any heat-producing surroundings to absorb heat and charge themselves for the rest of the day, just like you charge your phone, but they didn't have phones then. You continue walking around trying to find something to eat. Your stomach is growling and you feel you're getting weaker. The wind picks up and throws some snow at you. Good thing you're wearing a thick coat and some proper leg wear. You're getting tired and need to find a place to rest. But out in the wilderness, staying in one place is like offering yourself as an open buffet to any predator. You sneak out and manage to get into a small cave to escape the upcoming blizzard. You start a small fire to keep warm, but you turn around and notice that the cave inside extends further. You quickly make a torch and walk inside. Scientists said that some dinosaurs might have burrowed to survive the storms. They found some structures in southern Australia that resembled a habitat for burrowing creatures around 100 million years ago. After walking for hours, you finally reach the other end of the cave, but this time the weather is a lot better and the sky is crystal clear. You notice small footprints leading to the river. Strangely, there's no icy crust on the water, so you cup your hands and take a few quick gulps. Suddenly, a large shadow looms over you. You turn around and see a huge feathery dinosaur with bulging eyes. It kinda looks and moves like a velociraptor, and it's looking straight at you as if you were its snack. You get up slowly. You know you can't outrun it, so you have no choice but to fight it off. But then another figure appears nearby. A small herbivore called the Leolinacera, walking on two legs with a long tail, pops up and takes a sip from the river. The carnivore's attention has shifted towards it, and it forgets about you. Out of nowhere, a giant theropod rushes in from behind the frozen forest and chases them. You run back to where the cave was, trying not to get spotted. Humans weren't in the script then. 7 million years ago, Homo sapiens split from apes, becoming a fully independent species around 200 to 300,000 years ago. Neanderthals also thrived. While Homo sapiens were living and thriving in Africa, Neanderthals were migrating to parts of Europe and Asia, and were the first humans to live through an ice age. Scientists claim that Neanderthals couldn't compete with Homo sapiens and slowly disappeared. Some of them integrated with Homo sapiens. Earth has been through 5 ice ages. They're powerful enough to change Earth's physical structure permanently, and are partly responsible for landscape design. We're actually in the middle of an ice age right now that's been going on for 2.6 million years. But we happen to be living in the warmer interval parts that can last for tens of thousands of years. Neanderthals were shorter and stockier than Homo sapiens. They had wider noses and big skulls. According to scientists, they lived in caves and fashioned up clothes and tools made of stones and bones. They also had flat teeth on their jaws for gnawing and chewing, just like Homo sapiens. Ice ages played an essential role for Homo sapiens to adapt and survive. In their caves, they were able to draw scenes of hunting and gathering, and were the first ones to harness the power of fire for warmth, protection, light, and cooking. They also used an advanced system of sewing clothes, using bone needles and animal skins to make thick coats to warm themselves up. Ah, those were the days, huh? So, let's consider velociraptors as pets. Yeah, walking your dino in the park, playing fetch, and we probably could have it now if it hadn't been for those pesky asteroids. To be fair, we ended up with mammals, which, let's face it, it was a pretty solid trade. But here's the big question. Why didn't reptiles make a grand comeback? Why did mammals rise instead? The answer, believe it or not, involves fungi. Yup, the same stuff that gives you athlete's foot and ruins your leftovers also wiped out dinosaurs. Welcome to the weirdest twist in extinction history. It all started with a very bad day 66 million years ago, when a 9-mile-wide asteroid crash-landed in what's now Mexico. This space rock was moving so fast that it vaporized on impact, punching out a crater 10 times its own size. Now, if you remember anything from your physics class, and no judgment if you don't, high speed means high energy. And that energy turned into a blast wave and heat so intense it could have cooked anything in the area instantly. And it didn't stop there. Tiny molten rock beads rained down globally, generating radiation equivalent to 20 million megatons. Forests caught fire, wildfires raged across continents, and the sky filled with soot and sulfuric acid. Earth turned into a planetary air fryer. Then came the blackout. With all that debris in the atmosphere, half of the sunlight couldn't reach the surface, making sea surface temperature drop by 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Within just a few weeks, the planet entered a literal impact winter. There was no sunlight for at least 2 years, and Earth experienced a 15-year-long climate collapse while the dust slowly cleared. 75% of all animal species completely disappeared. Those that survived the initial blast faced tsunamis, starvation, and the collapse of entire food chains. If you were a big animal, say over 55 pounds, your chances were basically zero. And if you were a plant, forget about it. No sunlight means no photosynthesis. And that means no plankton, no trees, no grass, and eventually no herbivores, which means no carnivores either. It was a domino effect straight into extinction. The Earth became a cold, dark graveyard. But there was one organism that looked around and said, "Yeah, this is perfect." And it was fungi. Now, fungi thrive in moist, dark, and decaying environments. You know, like a world blanketed in ash full of dead trees and rotting animals. With no sunlight and plummeting temperatures, fungi had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to take over. And they did. Fossil records show widespread fungal contamination in the period after the impact. It was a global fungal bloom, like the moldy icing on an apocalyptic cake. Now, this was great news for fungi, but terrible news for reptiles. See, fungi aren't just harmless mushrooms. Many are pathogens, and they love cold-blooded creatures. Reptiles, including some of the dinosaurs that survived, were ectothermic. This means that they relied on external heat sources to warm their bodies. In a normal situation, a nice sunny rock would do the trick. Bask in the sun, raise your internal temperature, and fight off infections. It's like an induced fever, because, unlike mammals, like me, their bodies don't do it for them. And yes, I'm a mammal too. But there was no sun, remember? And a cold reptile is a sluggish reptile. Their metabolism slows down, which might sound like a good thing, because it means they can survive on less food and oxygen. But in this new hostile world, it was a disaster. They had less energy to move, less energy to hunt, and couldn't even digest food properly. Their bodies were colder, weaker, and easier for fungi to invade. Reptile reproduction was hit hard too. Most reptiles lay eggs, which are usually buried in the soil or left in hidden nests. But with the soil now damp, cold, and riddled with fungal spores, those eggs became easy targets. Spores penetrated the thin eggshells, destroying the embryos before they could hatch. So not only were adult reptiles struggling to fight infections, but their future generations were being wiped out in the nest. This vulnerability isn't just ancient history. We still see reptiles and amphibians struggling with fungi today. There's a type of fungi, hey, you try to pronounce this, that decimated frog populations. And reptiles in colder or poorly maintained environments have to deal with fungal skin infections. Which brings us to the protagonists of the era, mammals. At the time of the impact, mammals were tiny, scrappy creatures about the size of a rat. But they had a secret weapon, actually several. First off, mammals are warm-blooded, something scientists call endothermic. They produce their own body heat. and that alone gives them a major edge, because most fungi can't tolerate temperatures above 98.6 Fahrenheit. So, while reptiles were freezing and being turned into fungal buffets, mammals were literally too hot to handle. Their warm bodies acted like natural shields against infection. And then there's reproduction. Mammals carry their young inside their bodies. This means that their developing babies were safe and warm, insulated from the hostile external environment, instead of being exposed to the unfriendly world, protected just by a fragile shell. No eggs? No problem. Their metabolism was another secret weapon. Their fast-burning energy systems let them move more, hunt more, and eat more. And because they were small, they didn't need a lot of food. And here's the cool part. Mammals probably ate fungi. Yep, the same organisms ruining the lives of reptiles. And this fungal diet might have helped them boost their immune systems, giving them an evolutionary edge. Over generations, this resistance was passed down, which explains why fungal infections mostly give us an annoying rash, but still wreaks havoc among reptiles. Of course, not all dinos were cold-blooded. In fact, some massive creatures, like the T-Rex, were warm-blooded. But, warm-blooded or not, their size worked against them. You know, giants need giant meals, and in the post-impact world, those meals didn't exist. Being warm-blooded helps, sure, but not when you're too big to feed. Small dinosaurs, however, were a different story. Some survived, and we call them birds. Their small size meant they were lighter and needed less food, and their feathers helped with insulation. Being able to fly was also a flex, since they could reach food in higher places. Their beaks and guts were adapted for flexible diets, and bigger dinos were definitely picky eaters. Evolution did its thing, and the line between birds and dinos blurred forever. The same survival playbook worked for mammals. Small size? Check. Safe reproduction? Check. Versatile diets? Double check. While the rest of the world was on pause, mammals scurried through the underbrush, dodging disaster and waiting for the dust to settle. And then it did. The sun eventually came back. Plants started growing again. Life rebooted. But this time, the stage was different, with big reptiles mostly gone. No more towering predators, no more thundering herds of horned beasts. Mammals had room to stretch, and they did. They grew fast, but not too fast. Mammals never got dinosaur-sized, and that's not a coincidence. Large herbivores today, like elephants, have it easy since their food doesn't run away from them. But large predators are rare for a good reason. Hunting is hard. Your prey sees you coming, so you can't be a big, tall dummy running around. Besides, you need energy to chase, stamina to fight, and a metabolism to match. And you know how that worked out for dinos. Not to mention, mammal bones aren't built like dinosaur bones. The latter had hollow structures, even air sacs, to support their size. But if you stack too much weight on a mammal's bone, it'll snap. Nature has limits, and mammals have learned to work within them. So, when the light returned, reptiles were fewer and more fragile, clinging to the edges of ecosystems. Mammals, on the other hand, were everywhere. Before the asteroid, dinosaurs kept mammals small, and mammals, well, they didn't get much say about that. But now, with the giants gone, mammals could finally level up. And fungi? Well, they stuck around too. But mammals had already passed the ultimate test and came out on top. Thanks to their body heat, internal babies, flexible diets, and a little help from some deadly mushrooms, mammals inherited Earth. So yeah, no pet velociraptor. But maybe that's okay. You got a cat, right? Close enough. Actually, I think dogs are better. How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments. Now, thanks to new fossil discoveries and technologies, we're getting to learn more and more about the biology of dinosaurs. Some people don't need to know more than the fact that a few of them were colossal, terrifying, and vicious. But for those of us that do, the use of comparative biology, pigment analysis, and powerful new X-rays have allowed us to gain insight into specific features, such as their colors, eating behaviors, and the shapes of their tongues. Yes, that's right, the shapes of their tongues, which, for a long period of time, was something of a mystery. This is because soft, fleshy dinosaur parts are hardly ever retained in fossil form. But thanks to the discovery of some surviving hyoid bones, which are situated at the root of the tongue in front of the neck, we now have some insight. Most animals have this hyoid bone that anchors the tongue. The shape and complexity of the bone determine how free-moving the tongue can be. Scientists have discovered that nearly all dinosaurs had simple tongues that laid flat and were extremely similar to the tongues found inside the mouth of a crocodile today. Yeah, this crocodile. Go ahead and take a closer look. Nah, just kidding. Come on back. Let's take a look at some specific dinosaurs and start with a Brachiosaurus. Let me stick my neck out on the line by guessing that most of you will be familiar with this dinosaur because of its neck. You know, the one which was typically 30 feet in length. Despite its neck being its most distinctive feature, its name actually translates to arm lizard in Greek. It's common knowledge that the Brachiosaurus is one of the largest dinosaurs to ever have lived. On average, it reached 76 feet in length and 40 feet in height. That's roughly the length of 2 school buses and as high as a 4-story building. None of which were around in the era of the big guy here. Fragmentary leg bones and vertebra of even larger dinosaur species are known, but these skeletal remains are too incomplete to determine their exact size. So this guy may have been the largest dinosaur ever. A renowned herbivore, thank goodness. The Brachiosaurus is thought to have eaten up to 880 pounds of dry plant matter every day. Most of this was made up of coniferous trees, ginkgos, and cycads. This target might have been hard to hit for this dinosaur, as researchers have learned that its teeth were spoon-shaped and not ideal for chewing food. This means that the creature would have swallowed vegetation whole, as its teeth were suited to stripping it but not breaking up large chunks of plants. This, along with the dinosaur's body shape, suggests that the Brachiosaurus would have liked to feed as quickly as possible. Dinos like these didn't always make use of their ability to strip towering trees when dining. The Brachiosaurus traveled in herds, moving to the next location once they had exhausted all of the local vegetation. And I mean all of the local vegetation, not just that which hung high on trees. It's likely that the creatures supplemented their diets with vegetation at lower levels, especially after they'd done a number on all the nearby trees. This method of feasting was the most energetically appealing for this giant. By munching on lower vegetation, researchers believe that the dinosaurs saved up to 80% in energy compared to when foraging for high-up food sources. They have also discovered that the nostrils of a Brachiosaurus were on the front of its face and not the top. This is because we now know they roamed the fertile floodplains in their respective herds. For decades, it was believed that these creatures lived in deep, watery swamps. Let's look at another common misconception about a popular dinosaur. Please put your hands together for the Tyrannosaurus rex, which is arguably the most famous of all dinosaurs. Discoveries from the past 100 years have revealed that theropods had heavily feathered skin. Theropods are the family of dinosaurs to which the T-Rex belongs, so naturally, people began to think that the creature would have been covered in feathers as well. However, a study from 2017 took skin impressions from the iconic dinosaur and found no evidence of the structures required to support feathers. If a T-Rex did have feathers, they would have been limited to its back. Researchers accept that other large dinosaurs of the same family as the T-Rex have been discovered with their remains covered in feathers. An example of this would be the Yutyrannus dinosaur. But as of now, the accepted theory is that feathers weren't a common feature of T-Rexes. This makes it easier to believe that feathers were exclusive to smaller tyrannosaurids and were there as a means of keeping the creature warm. For a long period of time, researchers thought feathers were an exclusive feature of the theropod family. But this theory has been debunked. Just like the kid at camp who was kicked out of the top bunk. You know, debunked. Anyway, fossil evidence discovered in Siberia now suggests that multiple different family groups of dinosaurs had feathers. The Siberian fossils in question belong to another species of dinosaur, Calindrodromeus zebucolicus. Oh, you think I mispronounced that? Okay, prove it. Now, this dinosaur, I'll call her Calinda, had a pelvis structure superficially similar to that of a bird and was roughly 4.5 feet long, about as tall as a fridge. Since the purpose of feathers on dinosaurs was for warmth, it's quite possible that dinosaurs from cold weather climates had more feathers than their counterparts in warm weather climates. In general, bigger animals struggle less with keeping themselves cool, so it's likely that any of the large dinosaurs who lived in these warm climates had no feathers at all. Smaller dinosaurs who lived in cold climates, on the contrary, had plenty of feathers. We now even understand what some of the designs and patterns of these feathers on dinosaurs looked like, thanks to the discovery of an ornithomimus, complete with feather and skin impressions. The name of this dinosaur is derived from Greek and actually translates to bird mimic. They were typically 11.5 feet in length, nearly as tall as a giraffe, and despite being omnivorous, had no teeth. Its other distinctive features include 3 fingers, which were all unusually the same size and length. And despite their thin bone skulls, they also had large brain cavities. Their legs were extremely long, in particular their foot bones. Combine this with their toothless beaks and long necks, and yep, it must have looked a lot like an ostrich. Although they're not as big as the Brachiosaurus or dinosaurs in general, they are bigger than any other bird in the world. And it wasn't just the body limbs of an ornithomimus that made it resemble an ostrich. They also had very similar feather patterns. Their heads, necks, and lower legs were mostly bare of feathers, but the rest of their bodies were well coated in downy plumage. This is what you call a bird's layer of feathers as a whole. It's possible, like an ostrich, that the dinosaur would have used this unusual feather pattern to regulate its body temperature. Despite some dinosaurs possessing feathers like birds, on top of also being their distant relatives, dinosaurs didn't have the type of feathers required to fly for most of their existence. Feathers found in fossil impressions or preserved in amber have allowed researchers to gain insight into why these creatures weren't very aerodynamic. The structure of these feathers appears to be very simple, with a poorly defined and flexible central shaft. These feathers would have better served any dinosaur as a fashion statement, as they would have helped attract the attention of other dinosaurs. These feathers also would have had the ability to regulate body temperature. Surprised to hear that dinosaurs had ostrich-like feathers? Wait till I tell you that their prehistoric distant reptile cousins had something that looked like fur. Allow me to introduce you to the pterosaur. Its name is derived from Greek and translates to winged lizard. Just like dinosaurs, they were initially thought to have scaly or leathery skin all over their bodies. But over the course of the 20th century, fossil examinations revealed that many parts of a pterosaur's body were furry. The wingspan of a pterosaur could reach the length of over 23 feet, about as long as a London bus. Its toothless jaw was very long and resembled that of a pelican. How could something that looks like a pelican be so terrifying? These creatures were coated in pycnofibers. Those were simple structures, feather-like in composition, but strand-like and fuzzy like fur. Further research suggests that some parts of the pterosaur's body had more complex kinds of feathers with branching strands. If this is accurate, it would be the first time feathers were found on an animal that was neither a dinosaur nor a bird. Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, Many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got out-competed by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily, they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Varanus, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on our list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyorus lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyorus in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.
Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Perseus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time, and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, Marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was, but they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Paracetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life.
Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now, our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the megafauna, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they love hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. first appearing around 42 million years ago, in July I think. Many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall, as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet, and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to Asian pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were in fact intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago.
The problem with that asteroid that destroyed dinosaurs was not that it fell, but where it fell. This colossal space rock found the worst place where it could land. Also, the angle at which it hit the ground was the most unfortunate. If it had fallen vertically, there would have been less destruction. But it fell at such an angle that it threw a huge amount of dust into the air. After the disaster occurred, tons of soot started burning. 65 million years ago, only 13% of Earth's surface contained the right amount of sulfur and oil needed to form a colossal amount of soot. If the asteroid had fallen on the other 87% of the territory, dinosaurs could still be living today, but it hit the worst place and lifted 1 million tons of burning material into the sky. A cloud of incandescent particles covered the sky and set off on a journey across the mainland. Then, these particles settled on the ground and caused large-scale fires. Trees were burning and sending more soot into the sky. But the asteroid collided not only with rocks, it fell on the coast in a place where the seabed was filled with sulfate. As a result of the collision, it started burning, which caused the release of sulfuric acid into the atmosphere. The air became poisoned. It seems the dinosaurs didn't stand a chance. And now, let's imagine the asteroid falling in another place, somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Huge waves flooded part of the land, but almost all kinds of dinosaurs survived. Or even better, the rock could have fallen somewhere in the desert and left behind a giant crater. That's all. Yes, several dinosaurs passing by wouldn't have survived the collision, but the situation wouldn't have been so critical in general. So, giant lizards remain dominant on our planet. They don't allow other animals to develop since Tyrannosaurus and other ferocious reptiles hunt mammoths and other ancient creatures. The population of mammals is decreasing. Velociraptors are fighting for territories with saber-toothed tigers and giant bears. A struggle for survival between dinosaurs and other animals begins. Then, the Ice Age comes, and some reptiles don't survive. Then, new players enter the field. Those are humans' early ancestors. Living side by side with dinosaurs is difficult. Lizards attack settlements and caves, so people have to build high walls for protection. By the way, the Tyrannosaurus poses less danger to people than you might have thought. According to the latest research, many creatures were able to run away from this monster. Yes, you probably saw how easily they caught up with cars in the movies, but it wouldn't be as scary in reality. Paleontologists and biologists have analyzed the strength of dinos' bones and found out that the creature couldn't reach high speeds. The maximum it was capable of was running twice as slow as a field athlete. Thousands of years have passed. People have learned to live with dinosaurs. They've even managed to tame some lizards. They've domesticated herbivorous dinosaurs to develop agriculture. Triceratopses and bulls now plow fields together. Imagine farms swarming with diplodocus or brachiosauruses. People climb their long necks and pick fruit from high trees. Stegosauruses protect pastures from wolves and velociraptors. Dinosaurs with shells, such as ankylosauruses, help people cross deserts. They, along with camels and donkeys, carry heavy loads. People share the planet with ancient lizards and live in harmony. The situation in the seas and oceans is much worse. Sea reptiles attack wooden ships and catch all the fish. Imagine that you're sailing to another continent with tons of grain, fabrics, fur, and other goods. And then a giant mosasaur appears on the horizon. It's one of the most powerful sea lizards. A great white shark looks like a small fish next to it. The creature could easily defeat a megalodon. and then it comes across a wooden ship. It bites into the deck and pulls the whole boat underwater. Water dinosaurs are the main obstacle to communication between countries. This slows the progress down for 100 years. People built metal ships to withstand the attacks of the mosasaur, and finally, they managed to establish sea connections. A similar problem occurs when the first planes take off into the sky. Imagine you're flying on a passenger Boeing. You look out of the window and see a pterodactyl. Wait, it's impossible. These winged lizards aren't so fast, but they can catch up with a helicopter or some old biplanes. This poses a serious threat to flights, so people install sound protection systems on board each aircraft. Pterodactyls hear irritating ultrasound from a distance and fly as far away from it as possible. People equip submarines and ships with the same sound shields. Then, after people have learned how to defend themselves from dinosaurs, another problem appears. Lizards are the kings of wildlife, so they displace all other animal species. Dinosaurs run across African savannas, and lizards with fur live in cold winter forests. Lions, wolves, and bears are not the rulers of the wild. Rhinos fight with Parasaurolophuses. Stegosauruses attack hippos and take away their territories. Venomous dinosaurs live in jungles. Lizards that can climb trees scare monkeys. Imagine a reptilian ape jumping from one branch to another. To save regular animals from extinction, people have to control the population of predatory reptiles. Huge parks and nature reserves appear in all countries. People transport dinosaurs there and separate them from other wildlife. Dinosaurs seem to be completely under control. When the danger caused by giant reptiles passes, people begin to breed smaller, harmless lizards. Someone buys a chameleon, and someone keeps a Microceratus at home. There are dinosaur exhibitions. People take these creatures for a walk as if they were dogs. Some people take selfies with reptiles, go shopping, and sit in cafes with small lizards. Dinosaurs aren't formidable now. They're kinda cute. People ride horses, camels, Parasaurolophuses, and Pachycephalosauruses. Of course, many have tried to tame velociraptors, but failed. Those are dangerous reptiles and they don't know how to obey. Taming them is almost as difficult as taming an alligator. But dogs and cats are still more popular because they're more intelligent. The brain of a dinosaur is almost the same as that of a chicken. But who knows, if they had lived to this day, perhaps they would have evolved into smarter creatures. Just imagine if dinos were intelligent. In this case, people would have a big problem. Some scientists think that even if a meteorite hadn't destroyed the dinosaurs, they wouldn't have survived to this day. They needed to carry their own colossal weight at all times. It was an enormous load on their bones and joints. Most dinosaurs wouldn't have been able to survive the Ice Age with such characteristics, but smaller lizards might have succeeded. Fast and agile dinosaurs, such as velociraptors and Pachycephalosauruses, would have survived, but in what form? Could dinosaurs have already evolved into something else? Look at the good old chicken. Many scientists believe it's a direct descendant of the formidable Tyrannosaurus. Somewhere deep inside the bird's DNA, there are genes that the dinosaur had. Yep, it's hard to believe, but look at the chicken's body structure and how it walks. Remove the plumage, cover the creature with scales, and give it toothy jaws instead of a beak. And now, you have a mini T-Rex in the coop. And by the way, not only chickens might be the relatives of giant lizards, many birds are dinosaurs' living descendants. Surprisingly, alligators, snakes, crocodiles, and monitor lizards are not as close to ancient reptiles as pelicans, storks, and other flying creatures. Over millions of years of evolution, the paws of dinosaurs turned into wings, and toothy, elongated jaws ended up as beaks. The genetics of birds is the key to understanding dinosaurs. Pelicans are similar to pterodactyls, ostriches to velociraptors. Perhaps many other animals also share some genes with ancient lizards. If the meteorite hadn't fallen, all dinosaurs would have evolved into completely different, unusual creatures. Scientists want to carefully study the DNA of birds and try to reverse evolution with the help of genetic engineering. They hope to breed dinosaurs out of eggs one day. But to do this, they need to find a specific genome that hasn't changed over tens of millions of years. It hides in the DNA, and it's not so easy to find it and extract it. Do you think we will see powerful reptiles by 2050?
Big herds of dinosaurs run through the forest. The temperature rises rapidly, and everything behind them begins to ignite. Some dinosaurs get stuck in swamps and can't get out. Pterodactyls fly over their heads as they try to avoid the blast wave that will soon cover the Earth. This event happened about 66 million years ago. It wiped out almost every living thing on Earth. Birds and flying dinosaurs were just about the only ones who could survive the most massive extinction event ever. Hey, don't blame me, I wasn't around then. Let's go down their evolutionary tree to look at the world's first bird, Archaeopteryx. It was about the size of a modern raven, but it looked like a small dinosaur with feathers. It had many small conical teeth, almost like alligators. It's because Archaeopteryx was closer to reptiles than to birds. However, its brain was 3 times larger than that of these reptiles. Although it had wings with feathers, it could hardly fly like modern birds. Its shoulder joints didn't allow it to lift its wings above its back, so it couldn't make a full wing beat. Most likely, Archaeopteryx was capable of gliding flights with small wing flaps. Evolution has led to more evolved species capable of full flight. Pterodactyls. These guys had no feathers, but membranes made of skin and muscle. Its wingspan was about the length of a human leg. It could fly perfectly and catch fish and small animals. Although flying dinosaurs could easily outrun terrestrial predators like velociraptors and T-Rexes, most of them didn't make it through the impact of a giant meteorite. Let's look at this event step by step to see how they got to our time. 10 minutes before the meteorite crash. A massive rock about the size of Manhattan Island is moving towards Earth in space. It weighs 460 trillion tons. That's like 3 trillion blue whales, the heaviest mammals that ever lived on Earth, and it's approaching our planet at 12 miles per second. At that speed, it could cross the Atlantic Ocean in just 4.5 minutes. That's twice as fast as our modern spacecraft could fly. 5 seconds before the meteorite crash. Ooh, this is getting tense. The Earth's gravitational force continues to pull the giant meteorite. It blows a hole in our atmosphere and creates a popping sound so loud you could hear it on the other side of our planet. All the animals on our planet wake up in a panic. They lift their heads up and see a huge rock that begins to burn through the air. Smaller fragments start to break away from the main meteorite. This fire is so bright that it shines almost like the sun. Flying dinosaurs and other ancestors of modern birds are the first to sense danger. They make a beeline to the sky and try to fly as far away from the impact site as possible to save their lives. The moment of impact. The colossal mass and velocity of the meteorite give it an enormous amount of energy. As soon as it touches the Earth, it causes an explosion of 150 trillion tons of TNT. The blast wave literally rips out chunks of our planet and throws them up. A huge wall of energy begins to move from the point of impact in all directions. It snatches the trees out with their roots and pushes them to the ground like dominoes. The shockwave completely wraps around our planet. This energy turns into heat. Everything around the impact site begins to ignite. Green jungles and trees turn into smoldering charcoal in seconds. The ground and rocks simply evaporate. The collision caused a massive earthquake. Some dinosaurs may have fallen into cracks that appeared in the ground. A strong earthquake caused a tsunami, with waves higher than the Empire State Building. Dinosaurs that weren't trapped in the burning forest were washed away by the enormous waves. The dinosaurs of North America tried to escape by running to the north, but the blast wave inevitably catches up with them. Flying dinosaurs have no problem with earthquakes or tsunamis. They fly high enough to avoid the giant waves, but they will have to contend with continuously falling meteorite debris. 5 minutes after the meteorite crash. A meteor shower of giant rock fragments continues to fall to Earth. Some meteorites were the size of a car, others were more like a large building. Ashes and dust rise into the air. Their temperature is so high that they melt and turn into liquid lava and then fall back to Earth, causing more fires. Meteor showers cause trouble for flying dinosaurs too. They have to maneuver and dodge the falling red-hot rocks. The high temperatures are a huge problem for them because it might make them lose feathers. With no feathers, they aren't able to fly. 10 hours after the meteorite crash. The dinosaurs continuously ran north all this time. They found themselves in unfamiliar territory with many swamps. Giant dinosaurs like T-Rexes have legs as long as an adult human's height. They have a chance to get through this terrain, but if they fell, they could never get back up. The smaller dinosaurs, like Triceratops, had short legs and couldn't grow through the dense swamps. 1 month after the meteorite crash, 15 trillion tons of ash were ejected into our atmosphere. A dark cloud blocked the sun, and the Earth was immersed in complete darkness. Surviving plants couldn't feed on the sun's energy and stopped producing oxygen. Surviving dinosaurs could hardly breathe because of the lack of air and a large amount of dust. The lack of sunshine in the sky made phytoplankton disappear. Many marine animals were left without their only source of food. The dust and ashes in the atmosphere prevent our planet from getting heat from the sun, and the temperature here is beginning to drop. The place where the meteorite fell was rich in sulfur. This toxic acid evaporated at the time of the impact and formed in clouds. Now there are acid rains on Earth. Flying dinosaurs now have to hide from these rains. They have to stay in caves and can't go outside to get some food. So far, a large number of terrestrial and flying dinosaurs have survived. They come out to see the aftermath of the disaster. The site of the impact was in present-day Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. The Chicxulub crater is located here. It's about 93 miles wide, like half of all of Lake Michigan, and it's 12 miles deep. You could plunge the whole Mount Everest in there, and there would still be 6.5 miles of available space. It wasn't the impact itself that made the dinosaurs disappear. The fire destroyed most of the plants the herbivorous dinosaurs ate. With no food, their numbers dwindled rapidly. Predatory dinosaurs had nothing to eat either. Acid rain and the disappearance of phytoplankton threatened all marine life. Even though birds managed to avoid the blast waves and tsunami, they were short of food too. About 80% of all birds didn't make it to the end of the extinction event. The problem was that all of the forests on Earth were wiped out. Most birds would nest and live in trees. Besides that, the forests were always full of food, from all kinds of ants and termites to flying insects and small mice. So, only those species that lived on the ground and could fly well survived. Most likely, they fed on the seeds of small surviving plants. This habit made flying dinosaurs lose their teeth during evolution. Instead of jaws with a bunch of sharp teeth, they got long beaks to grab tiny seeds from the ground. Although Earth looks like a terrible place to live now, there's an evolutionary boom for birds. They have to travel long distances in search of food. Their wings get stronger. They also feel safe from predators who regarded them as food before. No T-Rex now catches a sleeping bird off guard. About 1,000 years after the collision, the first dense forests appear. It gives another boost to evolution. 1,000,000 years later, forests full of food are populated by the ancestors of modern mouse birds. And 65 million years later, in modern times, we have about 10,000 species of birds. Pigeons, crows, eagles, and hawks, even penguins. These are all descendants of the dinosaurs. But there were other survivors. Some alligator and crocodile ancestors were able to adapt to changing conditions. About 80% of turtle species managed to survive the mass extinction, and now their descendants live among us. Snakes and lizards were also able to wait out the hard times in their burrows. Even some mammals, like monotremes, survived. This hedgehog-sized animal was able to continue to evolve. Many millions of years later, these mammals evolved into primates, which later gave life to modern humans. Much later came the iPhone. So your starship is flying through space at 99.9% of the speed of light. Hey, aren't you cool? The stars turn into bright, continuous lines. Infinite outer space has shrunk into a tunnel. A bright flash ahead. Boom! Starship shoots out of the tunnel like a cork. You see the ancient Earth. The computer says you went back 70 million years. You're a paleontologist of the future who traveled through time for one purpose: to see with your own eyes the most underappreciated dinosaur in history. You have come down to Earth and are walking through the jungle. Suddenly, you hear a mighty roar. There's a dinosaur coming out of the trees. It's more than twice your height and weighs as much as 4 cars. Scientists have found only 2 huge arms left of this dino. For 60 years, Dinosaurus has been a major mystery in paleontology. Now we can see this creature in its entirety. They managed to find a complete set of fossils in Mongolia. Translated from Latin, the name of this dinosaur means terrible hand. Apparently, this dino was lousy at playing poker. Dinosaurus is an animal cocktail that nature is prepared to make you both shriek and laugh. Let's take a look at it from the point of view of the evolution itself. First, we take the T-Rex. Dinosaurs and the king of the dinosaurs are about the same size. From the T-Rex, we'll only leave the powerful hind legs and the long tail. Instead of small forelimbs, we'll attach mighty 8-feet-long arms. And let's not forget about the fingers with razor-sharp claws. Each claw is as long as a kitchen knife. Then we add a hump like a camel's, a neck like an ostrich's, and a horse's head. And instead of a toothy mouth, we put a duckbill. Now our Dinosaurus is ready. It also has long and sharp claws on its flat feet. Such broad soles help it walk along the river bottom and not sink into the silt. Most scientists believe it was covered in feathers too. Plants were the main dish on this dinosaur's menu. To digest plant food, Dinosaurus swallowed stones. Many modern birds do the same. Stones in the stomach grind the tough plant fibers. In one of the Dinosauruses, scientists found 1,400 of those. Yes, this dino had a huge belly, which slowed it down a lot. With such a size, Dinosaurus lived for a very long time, 75 to 300 years, give or take. In a 100-million-year-old piece of amber, they found strange bones. They belong to the smallest dinosaur known to science. Take 2 paper bills from your wallet. This dino weighed the same. It was about the size of a modern hummingbird. Scientists don't know what the tiny dinosaur looked like more, a lizard or a bird, but they're pretty sure it could fly and hunted insects. Over 100 sharp teeth confirm that. What happens when you cross a chicken and a crocodile? You get one of these bad guys, a Hesperonychus. This dinosaur was small but had quite an attitude. It lived in North America and probably hunted mammals. It weighed only 4 pounds and was covered in feathers like a chicken. If the sloth was a dinosaur, it would look like a Suzhou lizard. It moved on 2 legs, was as tall as a modern giraffe, but weighed 3 times as much. Suzhou lizard had feathers on its body, and a long neck helped it look in all directions. Overall, the tail of this dinosaur made it look like a giant rat on 2 legs. When scientists first saw the fossils of this animal, they didn't believe they were real. The Hulscaraptor looks like a hybrid of a velociraptor and an ostrich, only this dino was the size of a goose. The creature's strong hind limbs confirmed that it could walk on land. The dinosaur hunted fish, diving underwater for its prey. Now, we're used to flying animals having 2 wings, but evolution loves to break the rules. The Microraptor had 4 wings. Strong feathers were attached to each of those. The dinosaur weighed no more than 2 pounds. Its feathers were black and shiny like a crow's. There are no birds on the planet that have 4 wings. That means they evolved from 2-winged dinosaurs. Microraptor was the dead-end branch of evolution that didn't give way to any new species of animals. It seems that this hard-to-pronounce guy, I'll give it a shot, Tanystrophus, was a dinosaur drawn for a cartoon. But it existed in reality and lived in the water. It weighed 300 pounds and was 20 feet long. Half of its body was a flexible neck the size of a green anaconda. Scientists don't know why the creature had such a long neck. Most likely the dinosaur used it to catch fish or play jump rope. Imagine that 66 million years ago, I wasn't around then, an asteroid didn't crash into our planet. The dinosaurs didn't disappear, and the mammals failed to dominate the Earth. This means the primates didn't evolve and remained in the trees. Who would have taken the place of primates in such a world? Many scientists believe it could be Troodon. The dinosaur had the largest brain relative to body size. It walked on 2 legs and was about the size of a human. Hypothetically, Troodon could evolve and become as intelligent as we humans are now. By the way, the smallest brain relative to body size belongs to Stegosaurus. It was the largest of the armored dinos. It was a plant eater, but its powerful tail and sharp spikes were feared by all hunters of the age. A Stegosaurus weighed almost 4 tons, but its brain was meh. Not much larger than a hot dog. Pagomastax was no bigger than a domestic cat, and it ran wild and free in Africa 100 to 200 million years ago. Imagine a bipedal lizard that looks like a parrot. Pagomastax was covered both with feathers and porcupine-like quills. It had a beak, but 2 sharp fangs grew from the lower jaw. Still, the creature's scary appearance is deceiving. The dino ran fast and could bite hard, but it was a peaceful plant eater all the same. Now, this one, Linhenicus, lived 80 million years ago. It resembled an ostrich that weighed like a medium-sized parrot. It could run quickly and hunted insects. Instead of arms, this dinosaur grew 2 tiny fingers with claws on their ends. It's the only 1-fingered dinosaur known to science. This strange creature was one of the ancestors of modern birds. Jeholopterus was a flying dinosaur, looking as if it came straight from a sci-fi movie. It looked like a cat with bat wings. The creature was feeding on insects, but there's another theory that it could feed like a mosquito. This dino landed on the backs of large dinosaurs and pierced their thick skin with sharp fangs. Now, this is a fairy tale unicorn. It's as white as snow, beautiful and graceful. And this is a Qingdao lizard, the real-life prototype of that horned horse. A bony horn more than 15 inches long grew on its head. Perhaps the horn helped float in the water, attract partners, or make different sounds. The fairy tale unicorn is definitely cuter than this prehistoric creature. Our next guy, Inostrancevia, resembled a cross between a lizard and a tiger. Imagine an animal that weighs as much as 5 wild boars, with the body length of a sedan. Limbs with sharp claws, fangs similar to those of a saber-toothed tiger, and powerful jaws. It was one of the most dangerous animals that roamed the planet Earth. It occupied a niche that today belongs to lions, tigers, and other large cats. Next, please. Epidexeturus. Now this is a small dinosaur about the size of a pigeon. It couldn't fly, but it was one of the first dinos with feathers. They were different from those of modern birds, though. They weren't divided into separate threads, but were whole and resembled plant leaves. This big guy, Therizinosaurus, isn't only known for its strange appearance and size, although it was as tall as a 5-story building and weighed like an elephant. The giant was notorious for the largest claws on the planet. It was really a manicurist's nightmare. 2-inch-long scythes protruded from its fingers. Despite those horrific appendages, it ate plant food, chewing it with its small teeth. The humongous jaws were needed to pull leaves off of tall trees. Ouch! Hey, I'm growing here! Meet the largest animal that flew in the earthly sky, Quetzalcoatlus. Just imagine a creature with a wingspan almost the width of a basketball court. To lift such a machine, it needed to be lightweight, so it only weighed as much as a modern pig, with its wings looking like a thin membrane. They stretched from the bottom of the legs to the elongated fingers. Artists often depict this creature covered in feathers, but its body was actually coated with fibers similar to human and animal hair. Acrotholus is an unusual dinosaur that wore a cap made of hard bone. No, not a baseball cap. The creature was the size of a Labrador retriever dog, but not as friendly. It wouldn't run after a stick. Rather, it would rush and ram its hard head into the rival of the same species or a predator.
There's a place on Earth so dangerous that even the most fearsome creatures of today wouldn't last a moment there. It used to exist in what we now call southeastern Morocco, the land called the Kem Beds. The story of this place stretches back to the Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. It might have looked like a beautiful place at first sight, a lush green forest, rivers glittering in the sun, until you meet some terrifying dinosaur. The lions or sharks of today are nothing compared to what the fossils show us. The Kem Beds were dominated by terrifying predators, and above them all, 3 of the largest predatory dinosaurs ever discovered. For example, Spinosaurus. This dinosaur was unlike anything you can imagine, a half reptile, half monster standing over 50 feet tall, bigger than a T-Rex. This hybrid with a crocodile-like snout and a sail on its back hunted the forests. But this dino could dive into the rivers, so not even waters were safe from it. It could catch huge fish, as if plucking them from the shallows. There was also Carcharodontosaurus, a carnivore with the name that literally means shark-toothed lizard. Its razor-sharp teeth could slice through flesh with terrifying ease. This monster stood almost as tall as a house and was faster, stronger, and more aggressive than nearly anything that had ever walked the earth. There was also Deltadromedus, a raptor-like dinosaur built for speed. It was a quick-moving ninja that stalked its prey with horrifying precision. Oh, and the skies were a fun place too, with all these pterosaur creatures flying around. These guys are often mistaken for flying dinosaurs, but they were actually a different kind, more like close cousins of dinosaurs. These majestic reptiles soared above the Kem Beds and had wingspans that could stretch up to 30 feet. The fingers were feathery, with a 4th finger kinda like bats. They could glide through the air so easily thanks to their super light skeleton. But it wasn't just the dinosaurs that made the Mokele-mbembe so horrifying. The waters also hid their own dark secrets. They were home to giant, terrifying fish and crocodile-like creatures. Their jaws were strong enough to crush bone, and they were lurking beneath the surface, waiting for anything unlucky enough to stumble into their path. One of the river creatures was Sarcosuchus, also called the super croc. Being about 40 feet long, it could easily swallow an adult human. Or better yet, it could take on a full-grown dinosaur and win. Its jaws snapped with unimaginable force, and no creature, not even Spinosaurus, was safe from it. Coelacanths could also hang out in the rivers. It was a monstrous predator that could easily swallow a huge fish whole. They had these creepy, icky fins that moved in a way similar to how human arms and legs move. And they could also kind of raise their heads like humans because of a special joint in their skull. Ew. Fun fact, we thought these monsters had gone extinct 60 million years ago, together with dinosaurs. But recently, we rediscovered them living and thriving in the Indian Ocean. Turns out they were just hiding in the deep waters. They probably didn't even notice the dinosaur asteroid or humans at all. Yay? Don't worry, over millions of years, they became basically harmless. They got 4 to 5 times smaller, even though they still weigh about 200 pounds. Just imagine what they were like back in the day. Mokele-mbembe waters were also home to giant lungfish and other creepy aquatic creatures. So you couldn't even drink or take a swim safely without getting bitten by something. Whew, what a place. Even turtles there were the size of cars. Imagine trying to survive in a world where creatures like this are literally everywhere. And I mean everywhere. This place was unique not because huge beasts lived there, but because of the sheer number of predators. You might think, it shouldn't be that easy for all these predators to hang out in one place, right? And you're right. Seems like prey was scarce there. That's even more chilling. All the predators just wandered around hunting whatever meager life remained. And if there's none, then fighting each other. For years, scientists have wondered why it was the case. Maybe that's just how life was back then. And all corners of Earth were crazy like that. Or is there something special about this place? Some even say that maybe it's just because we only found predators' fossils. Well, normal, friendly animals have disappeared, and that the fossil record might be skewed. But who knows? And the environment itself was just as fascinating as the beasts who lived there, just a bit more friendly. It's hard to imagine, but back in the day, this desert was a green paradise, humid and full of rivers. The heat of the sun scorched the land. The climate was hot, so hot that even the poles were warm. The weather there was extreme. Dry seasons followed by intense storms, which shaped the land and life. The giant rivers carved their way through this landscape. They stretched from the Sahara, emptying into the ancient Tethys Ocean to the north. If you were there, you'd see vast, interconnected basins, and beyond them, the central Atlantic Ocean. The floodplain stretched out beneath a sweltering sky. The rivers were just as wild as local animals, flowing lazily one day, but raging like furious beasts the next. At first, these rivers were powerful, carving deep channels through the land and creating wide sandbanks. But over time, they slowed down, and the landscape changed into shallow ponds and salt-covered flats. As water gradually faded away, it left behind a patchwork of wetlands and slow-moving waters. Right now, the Mokele-mbembe is a vast, rugged desert where time has stood still for millions of years. If you visited it, you'd see a giant escarpment, its rocky face winding along the border of Morocco and Algeria, bathed in the sun's harsh light. Beneath your feet would lie layers of fossilized history. That's one of the reasons why scientists were long fascinated with this place. it must be one of the most comprehensive collections of fossils ever discovered in northern Africa. There are fossils from other parts of Africa, of course, like Egypt's Bahariya Formation. But they don't tell us much about life during this time, not like Kemkem. That's all because those rivers we mentioned in hotter and drier places, they've eroded or still remain buried under the sand. The first discoveries from Kemkem began in the late 1940s. A scientist named Schubert uncovered bony fish fossils among the escarpment near the Morocco-Algeria border. Just a few years later, a paleontologist, René Lavocat, took things to the next level. Traveling by camelback, he scoured the desert landscape and uncovered a real treasure trove of fossils. He found the partial skeleton of a massive herbivore dinosaur. Finally, at least one peaceful creature in the Kemkem beds. This long-necked giant roamed the ancient river valleys and ate leaves like a good boy. For the next several decades, scientists only did small-scale fossil hunting expeditions to this place. There were modest discoveries made here and there. Then, in the 1970s, German paleontologist Helmut Alberti led his team to the Kemkem beds, and that's when things took a wild turn. They uncovered fossils of prehistoric fish, crocodiles, dinosaurs, and pieces of the infamous Spinosaurus. Imagine being one of the scientists on that team. They were probably jumping from excitement. By the mid-1990s, the fossil game changed dramatically. Incredible new species were identified from the Kemkem beds. Over the years, the discovery pace has only accelerated. Paleontologists, armed with new tools and techniques, have uncovered more fossils than ever before, and there's only more to come.